I know you're going to find this shocking, but social media, they haven't exactly changed their ways when it comes to censoring people who say things they don't like. One of the most important voices in the last 2 years has been Michael Sanger. Why? Well, you should really read his book and you'll find out why. It's called Snake Oil, How Xi Jinping Shut Down the World. Now, that sounds like something beneficial for people to know, right? If the leader of the world's largest country did something nefarious and did so on purpose, I would think governments, social media, everybody would be interested in what Michael Sanger has to say. But it seems like they're not, because he just got permanently banned from Twitter. Michael, what'd you do, brother?
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you for letting me come on the show. Really, over the last 2 years, I've been researching the response to COVID-19 and writing about that on Twitter, with a special focus on China's influence on the response to COVID-19. And that culminated with my book, Snake Oil, How Xi Jinping Shut Down the World, which really paints a damning picture of the motivations behind the response to COVID-19. What my research revealed over the last 2 years is that, using its influence in elite institutions and especially media institutions, academic institutions all over the world, and using propaganda on a sort of unprecedented scale, that China was able to launder these totalitarian policies, starting with lockdowns and then going to, of course, the mask mandates, and all these mandates just kind of launder them into, so-called science as a way of exporting their sort of totalitarian system all over the world. So, Twitter's pretext, the very last tweet that I went out on, was one saying that, every single one of these policies, from the lockdowns and masks to the mass testing and vaccine passes, was all one giant fraud. That was the pretext on which that they banned me, but it's very clear that they'd had their eye on me for a long time. And the irony is that was such a sort of powerful last tweet to go out on. And, of course, since that was my last tweet that I got banned for, that one ended up going viral and got seen, hundreds of times more than it otherwise would have. And I actually got a huge boost in, visibility for my book out of that. So it really kind of backfired on them. But yeah, this is, they definitely had their eye on my work for a long time. I don't think you can understate just how sinister this is, the role that these big social media companies have played, not only with the response to COVID, but in our political discourse overall. Twitter often compares itself to a publication like the New York Times. The New York Times is an extremely influential publication, and they do have their own bias, and that is inherent in everything they publish. The big difference is that, when the New York Times publishes a story or publishes an opinion piece, what you're reading is coming from the New York Times. That that is their opinion. With Twitter has a massive influence on our political discourse, and part of the reason for that is that when people use Twitter, they believe they're getting a sample of what the popular opinion is about any given subject. If Twitter is systematically censoring and canceling the most articulate and popular voices on any given side of any given discussion, then what you're creating is an artificial consensus. They're creating an artificial consensus as to what the popular opinion, popular consensus is on any given topic. That's something we saw with every single stage of the response to COVID-19. At first with lockdowns, people who opposed lockdowns were getting canceled. Then with every single stage, once you had vaccine mandates, prominent vaccine skeptics and skeptics of vaccine mandates were getting canceled. That creates this kind of false consensus. That's extraordinarily sinister. That's something that really nobody has ever had that power within our democracies before, to create that kind of artificial consensus and actually sow this illusion that there is a consensus around a certain subject that doesn't actually exist, to make the entire world believe that there is a consensus that is simply artificial. That's something that really you've only seen in the past within totalitarian dictatorships in China and the Soviet Union, for example. And so that's extraordinarily dangerous to our democratic discourse.
It is, and it seems so similar to China. I call it my sky is green theory, but basically it's just an example of all of our cultural institutions that are supposed to be separate entities They're all now saying the same thing at all times. They all protect each other. They all say the same things. And because of that, we live in what we think is an information age, but it's nigh impossible to get accurate information anymore.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is just like China. Regardless of what the motivation is, the exact motivation is for Twitter to be doing this, I mean, it's very clear that given the dishonesty of it, there's only one real explanation. They perceive it to be in their self-interest. This is a calculated move to say that, canceling this person, the bad press that creates for us, is worth it because, what this person has to say is more dangerous for us in the long term. Twitter, it's hard to say what their exact motivation is, but they know that this is a lie at this point. It's hard to believe that they are not aware that the response to COVID-19 has been an absolute catastrophe. And at this point, they're trying to keep that lie alive. They're trying to steer the conversation and keep this sort of fictional pseudo-reality alive, where the response to COVID-19 was actually justifiable. And so that's why they're on this new crusade to cancel some of the leading voices that are trying to shed light on how catastrophic the response to COVID-19 actually was and how that actually took place.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me.